أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم اللعين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد ومحمد يا أخواني وأخواتي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dear brothers and sisters, may the peace of Allah be upon you inshallah. So we continue with the book Filipino Combat Systems. So of course there is a part regarding the detailing the content with Eskrima, Kali, Arnis, Sikaran, stuff like that. So this is some technical aspect. So Eskrima is obviously some method of stick fighting. There is also Kali, which is related. There is also Arnis, so blade, staff, and stuff like that. I'm not familiar with every terms in the Filipino languages, but you get the idea. So the book will speak in detail of some techniques, some application and stuff like that. Also the history of the system, stuff like that. This is not the most interesting part for me here. So there is another part regarding the history and origin of Filipino combat system and retrospective on the development and the Muslim influence on the system, which is in fact the core of the system. And this is what is interesting. And even more because it was written by an American guy, a Christian guy, and even his teacher is a Filipino guy with a tattoo. At this time, it was not common for Muslim to have tattoo and stuff like that. So it is also a Christian guy because obviously Philippines was colonized by Catholic Spanish for around 333 years, if I recall correctly. So we're gonna read a little bit, explain the history and origins of Filipino combat system, the Philippines. Approximately 500 miles of the southeastern coast of Asia, there is an archipelago comprised of some 7,100 islands. Of this many thousand of islands, only about 350 of them are of 1 square mile or more. So this is some very small islands for most of them. This cluster of island is spread over 1,150 miles north-south and 7 miles east-west, making for a total land mass of 40,420 square miles. So this is very precise content. So the history, the geopolitical content is interesting. There is an expertise from the author. He studied his class. Hi. The Philippine Islands are possessed of a rich and diversified history. It is within the violent history of this archipelago that we find the origin of the various Filipino system of combat, including Cali. So, the island have a rich past of confrontation, of violence, and also a great recognition for its specific martial arts, which are seen in the world of martial arts as very refined, very specific, really technical, with a lot of angles, with a lot of specific move, trademarks of the system. The combat methods that find their origin in the Philippines are almost as numerous as the islands that make up the chain. It must be understood that when we speak of the Philippines, we are discussing a place that has been profoundly affected by the separation of its many small landmasses. So, some styles developed in these endemic small parts of this archipelago. Although Many of the islands are separated only by a small span of water. There are nonetheless been a certain degree of diversification caused by the isolating effect of the water that surround the many teeny islands. And for those who don't know, even the word isolation is from an Arabic root, isole. It exists in Arabic, in Proto-Arabic. The word was borrowed by the European. The diversity found in the fighting method of the Philippines is not only a result of its scattered island, but also of the tribal nature of its inhabitants. This diversity is demonstrated by the existence of approximately 75 Aboriginal languages and several alphabets. So great diversity. Like also in Indonesia, you have unified language like Bahasa for Indonesia and Tagalog for Philippines, but many indigenous languages. The official language is Filipino, the standardized version of Tagalog, a Mania dialect. There are still many other dialects commonly used in addition to the use of many Spanish and English words. Once fighting's method, like one's language, was usually the product of the geographical location in which an extended family resided. So the style of martial arts, like martial arts in Indonesia, are family oriented because of the topography, the geographical environment, the island, stuff like that. So an extended family developed a certain style, and this is what with trading, with contact with other people, there is a influence and distinct styles emerge. We can deduce from the record of a later time period that in the 15th century, most Filipino were farmers, hunters, and fishermen. Lowland people gathered in extended family, seldom exceeding 100 members, called barangays. Tribal chieftain called datu governed these clans. The Aboriginal inhabitants of the Philippines were a race of pygmies. This is the word of the author. The Aboriginal inhabitants of the Philippines were a race of pygmies called the Aetas or the Balugas. Later inhabitants were of Malay stock, coming from Southeast Asia and Indonesia. By the 10th century, there was a small Chinese and Indian influence on the population. Modern inhabitants of the island also show the influence of 333 years of Spanish rule. So this is the colonization part. And this is the same number of years with some maybe 330 for Indonesia with the Hollandese from Netherlands. Kali. Remy Pressas, the grandmaster of modern harness, explained the origin of the word Kali. So some etymology. He pointed out that in 200 before Christ, the Malays migrated to the island, bringing with them their long-bladed weapon called Kali. So even before Islam, there was contact with Malay people and the Philippines. And so the Malay people brought their weapon from maybe continental Asia, after Indonesia, and finally the Philippines. This word may have been a contraction of Jakalil, the name of a form of fencing native to Indonesia. The Majapahit Pajit or Sri Vishayan empires are said to have had sphere of influence that extended to the Philippines. According to tradition, 10 Borean datus, so datus is the word for chieftain, landed on the island of Panay in the 13th century, and that soon thereafter Kali was taught to children as a part of their basic education. So this is like in the Muslim, after Muslim tradition, there was a formal training, or the Greek tradition with the Spartiate and stuff like that. There was an initiation for the young generation to learn how to fight and to grow as a man. In the 15th century, Islam was introduced into the island by Brunei, and by the middle of the 16th century, there were two sultanates within the island. So, two Muslim sultanates in the Filipino islands. It is interesting. So, before Christianity, Islam was in Philippines. One of the first Western encounter with Kali is related to Pigfetta, the chronicler of Magellan. Magellan, the famous explorer. We record how the Portuguese explorer lost his life on 27 April 1521 in a conflict with chieftain Lapu-Lapu. So Magellan lost his life in the Philippines in the head of a war chief. Although conflicting stories are told of a fire-hardened piece of rattan being shoved through Magellan's breastplate, so this is his armor. Pigfetta accounts tell us that a bladed weapon was used. So bladed weapons, maybe like this, a morocris, maybe another kind, was used and gave the fatal blow to Magellan. Several decades after Magellan met his untimely demise at the hand of a Kali practitioner, the explorer Legazpi was given a more friendly demonstration of Kali when his ship landed to Abuyog, late in 1564. Legazpi founded the first permanent Spanish settlement in Cebu 1 year later. Had the people of the Philippines realized that this was to be the beginning of 333 years of Spanish rule under the flag of colonization, European colonization, they may have given Legazpi the same manner of treatment that Lapu-Lapu had given Ferdinand Magellan. So the death penalty, if the people of Philippines know the intent of this man, to rule them, to remove their faith, and to impose a Catholic version of Christianity by the sword. During century of Spanish occupation, Cali was influenced by Spanish fencing methods. So there is some Spanish fencing methods, notably one which is called destreza. So this is some special technique. I've got some book on that, and they took inspiration also from the Muslim heritage from Andalusia. So there is also a practice of angles, of geometrical pattern in the execution of the technique, of the theories of fencing. And sometimes a culture which was removed by force survive by other bias which were not intended, but due to its sophistication, it is retained as the influence of Islamic scientists during the Middle Age to this day. Even in Western country, we use numerical system of the Arabs, for example. The Spanish were not too happy with the Filipino love for Cali, although its popularity is said to have gone into decline in as early as 1596. The Spanish complained that the Filipinos were so engrossed in the art that they neglected their work in favor of training. So Filipino people were fond of martial art training, and so the Spanish colonizer, was not happy due to a lack of productivity and the possibility of threatening their rule. They also complained that the training methods were so violent and realistic that they often usually result in the loss of life. So they were doing heavy sparring with bladed weapon, and sometimes maybe they were on some kind of substance of stuff like that, but there were some casualties in terms of death. By 764, Cali had come to intimidate the Spanish to the point at which they found it necessary to ban its practice. So there was a ban in performing and training martial arts by the Spanish to the Filipino people. And you have the same during the Hollandese rule in Indonesia. And this is from this ban that you found some form of martial dance in Indonesia called ibing, for example, like you also found in Brazil with capoeira and stuff like that. So there was some martial practice of the oppressed people, and the colonizer were not happy with that, so they banned. And so the people which was under domination had to adapt and had to find ways to disguise their practice. A term which is called in Arabic taqiyya in the religious sphere. So taqiyya, it's like a pious dissimulation when people oppress you for your religion, for your belief. It was practiced and it is practiced and it is codified in Shia madhab, in the Shia school of thought, and it was also practiced by Sunnis like Ibn Taymiyyah, which saved his life with that, with this tactic, claiming he was a Shafi'i when he was in fact a Hanbali. So no shame with that. And this is how the son of Adam, Hibatullah, Shaykh alayhi salam, which was a prophet, survives, and is the father of Adamic humanity, in contrast to Qabil, la'anatullah alayh, which killed Habil, rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, wa alayhi salam. Although it was never eradicated, the practice of Kali was forced into secrecy. Only the Muslim of Mindanao and Sulu, called Moro by the Spanish, to the reference of the people of El Maghreb, so the great Maghreb, with country like Morocco, found the same Mor, and also Algeria, Cesare Mauritania, stuff like that. This is the original Moor that which was from Berber lineage, nothing to do with sub-Saharan ethnicity. It is from the North Africa, and it was the major ethnical group that come in Indonesia under the rule of the Arabs. The dynasty which went to Indonesia with Andalusia were Arabs from Banu Hashim or from Bani Umayyah. So there is some Shurafa from the Idrisi, from descendant of Imam al-Hassan, stuff like that. And there is also the rival branch of Bani Umayyah. But both were Quraysh. Banu Hashim had Al-Maghrib, Al-Aqsa, under the rule of Idris al-Awwal, and the people of Bani Umayyah had Andalusia, and were the founder of the conquest of Andalusia and the first also emirate independent here and stuff like that. So the Spanish reused the word Moro from the Muslims they encountered several centuries ago and applied to the new Muslim they found in Philippines. So the Muslim of Mindanao and Sulu, called Moro by the Spanish, openly defied the Spanish rule. So the Muslim of Philippines tested and defied the Spanish rule openly. It was not until the coming of the United States Army at the 48 years of US occupation that the warlike Moro were brought under some measure of control. So Moro were staunch and fierce enemies, and only the US were able to have some kind of control over them. They relentlessly attacked the Spanish rule. Even today, as I write this, in the year 2004, the United States still seeks to defang militant Islamic terrorist group operating in the traditional land of the Moro. So the Moro people are still, and I seen some video footage. This is like warlike scene. Their big city is under siege from foreign country. I don't know if this is from the government, stuff like that, but this is scene of wars. You even have here a photo of the Colt 45, which replaced the 9mm dotation army pistol due to the lack of efficiency of the 9mm bullet to the Moro. And we're gonna have a little more detail. The Moro, a modern variation of the model 1911 in 45 ACP, automatic Colt pistol, says the cartridge. Almost 100 years after it was designed for the US military, it still has a reputation with many as one of the most effective combatant guns in existence. Many modern combatant guns chambered for this round are in widespread use throughout the world. The veracity of the Moro is perhaps best attested by the fact that the United States Army was forced to abandon its 38 caliber sidearm in favor of a more powerful model 1911. So it was not 9mm parabellum, but maybe 38 special. In favor of the more powerful model 1911, the year of its adoption. 45 ECP. The 38 caliber sidearm provided inadequate for the task of stopping a blade-wielding Moro. So a Moro with a blade was a threat, even when you had a 38 caliber in your pocket. Inefficient to them. They had motivation. Blade wielding Moro in sufficient time to prevent him from reaching striking distance with his blade. Vic Hurley writes in his 1936 account, Swish of the Chris. This is the name of his account. 2 point. This Muhammadan words, so Muhammadan, practitioner of the religion of Muhammad, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Prophet of Islam. These Muhammadan words of America have had a glorious history. As is so often the case with the free, wild people, they have degenerated under the stultifying inhibition of civilization. But they still remain a mighty militant minority in the Philippines. In the proud bearing of the Moro is reflected the confidence gained by centuries of warfare. So the Moro Muslim of Philippines were fighters from centuries against colonialism. With the Moro, courage is a fetish, and when pitched to the height of religious fanaticism by his imams, so imams, a secondary priest of or a religious leader, and panditas, a head priest, there exist no more dangerous fighters on the face of the globe. So when they are channelized by their imams and by their chief head priest, they are the most dangerous fighter that exists in the face of the globe, from the perspective of a US military soldier and commander. The Moro loves the cold steel, and with his Chris, Barong, and Campilan, he carved an empire in the Philippines that lasted for years. His capacity to carry lead in the heat of battle stamps him as a truly great fighting man. In his military story are found many references to this almost unbelievable ability to remain on his feet, even when ridden with bullets. So the American was shooting at the Moro, wielding with blade, and were unable to make them down sufficiently quickly to escape the blade cut. So it poses a problem. It posed a problem for them. The Moro was responsible of the change in regulation of the United States Army, providing for the substitution of a 44 caliber pistol for the 38 caliber weapon formerly carried as a sidearm. So drastic change in terms of lethality. Experience in action against the Moro proved that a 38 caliber bullet was incapable of stopping a fanatic in time to save the soldier who had fired the shot. So a lot of casualty. There were many cases in the steering era of Chris versus Krag. Krag is a rifle that was used by US forces when American soldiers were cut down by barong. This is some bladed weapon with substantial size in the hand of literally dead Moros. So you found dead Moros with his weapon, and you found the dead American soldier shoot the Moro, which is dead, but the US soldier was dead too. In 1893, the army decided in favor of small bore sidearm, and Ordnance Board called for revolvers of 38 caliber to be tested for service use. The Smith & Wesson Company entered a armless revolver, and Colt offered a side swing model 38. In 1894, the Colt was accepted by the government. Smith & Wesson then developed a 38 Smith & Wesson Special that was also adopted by the United States government. These two guns were sent to the Philippines and to Cuba. In Cuba, they proved effective, but for Moro use, they proved absolutely ineffectual. The War Department therefore recalled the 38 caliber. So 38 caliber is 38 special weapons and resumed the Colt 45. So this is a picture of what a barong look like. So this is the handle, this is the blade, and the oval shape. The barong is considered by some of the national weapon of the Moros of Sulu, Mindanao, and North Borneo. The curved blade, a modern reproduction of the kris. So this is the kris, the kind of kris you found in Philippines, which are the Moro kris, which are bigger than the kris you found in Indonesia, for example. The curved blade kris cut a path of opposition to the century of foreign occupation of the Philippines. This ancient weapon probably originated in Java. The people of the region, so from Indonesia, the people of the region ascribed the creation of this blade to a 13th century king of Jonggolo named Inakoto Pali. By the 15th century, the blade began to appear in sculpture, and its various forms. This blade was used toward the Philippine archipelago. In 1637, Roman Catholic friars introduced a play called The Moro Moro. This play was a dramatization of the war with the Muslim Moors, of the eventual triumph of Spain and of the Christian Church over its Islamic foe. So there was a civilization enmity between the Moro and which was labeled as Muslim Moors and the Christian Church. It is from this play that the term arnis de mano most likely finds its origin. It is said that the soldier in this play wore an harness. Harness archaic to array in armor or equipment of war. That somehow lent its name to harness of the hand. It refers to the fighting methods that were once called kali. Modern harness is the name of the Filipino fighting system made popular by Remy Presas. Professor Presas was perhaps one of those most responsible of popularizing the Filipino art outside of the Philippines. Ray Jonaldo was greatly influenced, so the teacher of the author was greatly influenced by Professor Presas in the formulation of Filipino combat system, FCS. Of particular influence were the jiu-jitsu-like aspect of modernness and the concept of the flow, which is, in fact, a concept that you find in Arabic lettering. And that's why it influenced the people of Indonesia and later had a huge influence in the people of Philippines. Even it is removed. For those who don't know, even the book of the Muslim, Al-Quran, Quran means flowing. The holy book in Muslim faith have this notion of flow. You find also in French, courant, quelque chose de courant. More will be said about this concept later. The name Kali was by no means exclusively used throughout the island. Alternate name for Kali in different regions. The name of the group of region appear on the right. Pakkali Kali for the Ibanags. Kalirongan for the Pangasienans. Kali Radman for the Visayans. Eskrima or Garot for the Cebuanos. Baston, the people of Panay and Negros Occidental. Sinawali, the Pampagenos, for the Pampagenos. It could be argued that it is a question of semantic as to whether or not the various names given to Filipino martial arts are different names for the same thing, or conversely unique system or subsystem. In current terminology, most Filipino stylists refer to FMA, Filipino martial arts, as the catch-all phrase for the various system and subsystem, like Silat in Indonesia, like Pencak Silat. In fact, in Sumatra, I think they call it maybe more Silek. In Malaysia, Silat, and in Indonesia, Penka or Menpo. And so, Pencak Silat, this combination is more a generic term than an etymological truth for the system. It could be argued, Filipino combat system is often referred to by its practitioners as Kali. This also is simply semantics, as many system and subsystem are not generally called Kali are incorporated into this system. Guru Dia Naldo is always careful to give credit to all those who have influenced his art, and thus choose Filipino combat system as the official and most descriptive term for his art. So this is the end of this video. We're going through some historical material that is important to understand the development of martial arts and the influence of different civilization. For those who don't know, there is a big influence of Islam and interaction with extreme Asiatic civilization. It is a thing that is not known, but there is a tremendous amount of influence in the field of martial arts, an influence you don't find that easily with Christianity or other Abrahamic faith like Judaism, stuff like that. So it is important. So now people try to change this artificially, but in the history there is a big influence from Abrahamic faith from Islam. اللهم صل على محمد والمحمد. التمس الدعاء. الله معكم. إلى اللقاء. مع السلامة.